Welcome to our presentation on from the GID Exchange. In this presentation, I'll try to explain some of the processes that we use for this, for treating your open source ideas with the care and respect that they are supposed to have. If you are struck by creativity and would like to submit an idea, we have a QR code that you can scan, and that will give you direct access to our submission form. And just a quick word on the administration part. Please use the Q&A feature inside Hop in, and we'll prioritize those questions first in the chat. When we get to the end of the presentation, there should be a time to answer a lot of questions. So, in tradition, we have created our giants are female, and for our giants are female, we've chosen Kjær Philbin. She is the Director of Education at Raspberry Pi Foundation. She's also the Director of Education Support, and she has been there for more than 9 years. She's an author of the Adventures in Raspberry Pi. I hope she will come out with a LabVIEW edition soon. She's also a member of the Python Software Foundation, so she's doing a lot in the open source community, where she runs 2 YouTube projects, one being the Geek Girl Diaries and the other one being the Computer Science Crash Course. On the image here, she's holding one of the distinguished medals within Britain, which is an MBE, which is the member of the British Empire. So, with that covered, a little bit about me. My name is Jesper. I'm a systems engineer at GPower. I'm also the team lead on the GID Exchange and trying to orchestrate all of these parts. Besides that, I am a certified LabVIEW developer and Pythonista, as well as a test-stand developer. And I have a lovely wife who lets me do stuff like this, and a fantastic daughter who is a Danish champion in showmanship of cows. We live on a farm with about 40 Holsteins and a few Jerseys. Yeah, and I had my master's degree in 2009 from the University of Aalborg. But I'm not doing this alone at the GID Exchange. I am joined by Casey May, who is the creator of Bowzer the Browser. More on that later. We also have Felipe Pinheiro Silva, who is the LabVIEW champion and the author of the JSON Pretty Printer. We have Bill Welch, who is a LabVIEW champion and all-around great guy with a lot of knowledge within the industry. Then we have Eric Sleeper, who is a certified LabVIEW developer and a principal systems engineer. And last but not least, we have Quinton Aldrich, who is the LabVIEW champion and author of Q Controls. And then there's, of course, myself. But we have room for more. So if you want to join in and be part of this project and change it in a way or a direction that you see fit, then come join us. We have room for people. And you don't have to have a ton of experience. So basically, we're going to head there. We're part of GCentral. GCentral, if you don't know it, is an independent nonprofit organization. It's set aside to, or created to improve and promote the G language and access to this. It was introduced in 2019 by Chris Cellino and Quinton Aldrich. On the board of directors, and I have a representative, which is Eric Reffert. And it's the GCentral that handles the financial part of funding an idea. The GID Exchange is a sub group of GCentral.org. It's a committee under the GCentral umbrella, which is a platform to focus on the ideas by sharing both our resources and skills. We also do the marketing and the campaigning for your ideas that you provide to us. And we're also the ones moving the needle on the projects, making sure that they are being, there's a follow-up with you as a submitter of the idea, or these other parts. And those are some of the things that I'll be going through during this presentation. And then in between the two, we have Kjær, who is also part of the board of directors in GCentral, and therefore he is the liaison to the G-idea exchange. So any communication to and from the board of directors goes through Kjær. And we have tried to scope sort of the ideas that we support in the G-idea exchange. So we are trying to focus on open source toolkits, both the existing ones and creation of new open source toolkits. The focus here being open source. We also have existing open source toolkits that if you need to extend them for some reason and you would like us to handle the campaigning for funding and so on, this is sort of the idea behind the G-idea exchange. There is a output that we expect, and usually it fits into the category of either being a VI package for enhancing LabVIEW, a NI package for releasing full set of tools, or a GitHub repository, or all three of the above. But we also help the community with, as mentioned, marketing of the existing solutions, knowledge sharing on topics around packages and release, and generally trying to be a good community member by helping out. So the question of funding. Why should we involve ourselves in gathering the funding for open source ideas? In 50% of the cases that we have now, the ideas, the submitter of the idea would just like to have it made. Sort of a, somebody should make this approach. And in order to do so, nothing comes for free. So right now we have to collect some funding in order to take time from some of our approved developers or approved developer list, and have them build the tool that is requested. We also have the opportunity to take funding from organizations. So if your company is supporting open source, then point them in our direction. That way we can build new toolkits. This is one of the foundations in the GCentral that's focusing on improvement of the community and the toolkits in general for LabVIEW. And last but not least, in most countries, donations to a non-profit organization is a tax write-off. So instead of paying the surplus and the profits and taxes, maybe you should consider funding an NGO or a non-profit. And we hope you'll choose us, of course. But we also have a couple of other questions, which is, if we have an idea and it receives a lot of funding, what happens if it exceeds the goal that is set? Well, one way we could solve it was to move it to some of the other solutions or other ideas. So in that way, we get more ideas developed, and we make sure that the community prospers on this occasion. So the main idea and the main focus of the G-idea exchange is to get as many of the tools that are requested out there. But we also need some info from developers, and one of the hardest infos to get is, what does it actually cost to make? And as anybody who has ever tried to estimate a task in Agile knows, you're probably off by a factor of 8, maybe 5, perhaps 3 if you're lucky. So there are other funding tools, and there was a question that came up on LinkedIn at some point. Why aren't we just setting up a Patreon account or GitHub sponsors or Buy Me a Coffee or Kickstarter? Well, all of these solutions are okay, but they focus on the single developer, whereas we as an organization try to move it towards as many ideas as possible. This would be required to be on one idea instead. And of course, we welcome single developers who want to set this up, or companies who want to set this up. That's great. The more companies, the better. Better community, better number of projects out there. Really good. But we just can't use it for the purposes that I'm about to outline for you guys. So the way we see the developer process, a LabVIEW developer gets an idea to implement a new solution to a problem that is solvable by LabVIEW. And just within today, we've seen several examples of this, that there's an implementation and it's released through either the NI package manager or the VI package manager as an artifact, as a VI package. And this is then either distributed locally, internally in your company, or through the internet via vipm.io, which automatically markets the idea or puts the marketing description up, which is great. We all applaud that. And this workflow fits really great with the LabVIEW Community Edition. As long as no money is involved, this is a good fit. The strange part, or the dark part, becomes when money is involved, because sort of this is where the GID exchange sort of tries to fit in. Here we still have a implementer of an idea and a who sort of has a list of what they would like to achieve, but they want the GID exchange to handle the funding. So that could be the implementer would like to, or the submitter of the idea would like to implement it themselves, following the procedure that I just laid out. That's okay, but you just can't use LabVIEW Community Edition anymore, because now money are changing hands, and therefore it's not allowed. The next part, what if the implementer is not interested? Then we need to pick somebody who actually has a LabVIEW license from our developer list, and who is able to produce the product leading up to the quality assurance that we would like to have from the open source tools. So down the road, we would set requirements for how would this be implemented and what milestones would you need. I'll come back to that in a slide. But there's the third option. Maybe the developer comes up with an idea that actually is something that would fit greatly into another toolkit. Instead of coming up with a third test toolkit, perhaps pointing them towards either the Kjær team or the L-unit team would be an option. So it would just be a feature request. And then we just connect these two groups with each other instead. So basically, making sure that everybody has the best option for it. If we have, it's easy to create or to submit ideas in the when it doesn't have to be implemented yet. So many of the ideas that we get is usually, I would like finish the sentence, but it's too big to implement in any way, shape, or form. And therefore, some of the parts that we do is scope limitation on ideas, making sure that it's actually something that we can fund, and therefore also something that we can deliver on. So if we choose to, or if the idea is being developed, we start by creating an idea record, and that's part of the committee's job, is to make sure that there's a written record of all the ideas and making sure that all of them are handled correctly according to our rules and regulations. And then we do a session to make sure that we have all the questions that we might have to the idea itself. So we reach out to the submitter of the idea and clarify any missing parts. Then we do a second review of the task. After that, we'll do a voting whether it's something we should continue with or if it's something that we need to push to other entities. And that could be in the case of an idea we had about changing the layout of the website on GCentral. This was pushed to GCentral because it's not LabVIEW based. We also had a question about the workflow for Git processes. Again, something that somebody else already has handled in a way for both LabVIEW. I believe Kjær and Fabiola did a presentation of that at GDevCon, which would be a way better solution that we could come up with. So no reason to make it again. And after we sort of done the voting, we start campaigning. For the campaigning part, we use CauseVox, which is a platform for non-profit funding collection. And there are two parts during this campaign, as you can see marked here by the blue circle. One of them is that during the campaigning time, when we are getting close to the end goal, we will align how is the delivery going to be with the submitter if the submitter wants to be the implementer. Otherwise, we will start with the gathering of bids from our developer list of so to implement the idea itself. And of course, we will sort of come up with a goal if the submitter has not provided a financial goal of either a certain amount of time that needs to be used to implement it or a set amount of money to implement it. Then we'll try to figure it out based on our combined information on the idea and the questions that we have gotten clarified. And then once the campaign is finished and we have reached the goal, then the submitter of the idea or basically the implementer that is chosen, whether it's the submitter or one from the developer list, will send an invoice to GCentral once we have reached the milestones of the agreed development package as indicated here. And then the idea is released through all the known channels, either via IPM or GitHub or through our website. One thing during this campaigning, we're interested in finishing as many ideas as possible. So we're also making the marketing push for all the ideas through social media. So if I remember correctly, it's both Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, if I remember correctly. Might be wrong here. But until we get to that point, sort of in this area of the life of an idea, we sort of have a couple of candidates or with candidate status. So one of the things is we have an idea for a toolkit to ease or make Python a Python to VI conversion. Basically, it's a large project because it implements reading LabVIEW from, or having LabVIEW through VI scripting, reading a Python file and then generating all the functions that we need with the correct inputs, which sort of leaves you with the language specification of Python, which is quite extensive. So that's a project that currently is needing a breakdown, and we're working on that. But the idea is already there, and it's something that we would like to see being started soon on a funding campaign. We are working on the minimum viable product for this one. Next is a suggestion to make an active framework tester toolkit, sort of in the way that DQMH has its own test facilities. An idea would be to make the active framework tester as well. Another one is the VI analyzer through Git hooks. So making sure that all the analyzed or the change files in your branch will be analyzed through VI analyzer when you either commit or push to your branch. And last but not least, we have the LabVIEW environment for continuous integration and continuous deployment. And it's sort of putting LabVIEW in a Docker container and using this for build pipelines or for unit testing. But on top of that, there's been a sort of a combined idea of adding class-based instrument drivers for the hardware of NI. That would be a good solution for testing before going to the actual hardware. And these are all ideas that are waiting for some part to finish in order for us to put it in or to start the campaign through Courseworks. So we also have some of the ideas that are actually looking for funding at the moment. So one of the projects is from Enrique in Mexico, who is he's also part of the GLA summit. So reach him out and talk about DQMH. I'm certain he would like to do that. He's a trusted advisor, and he also did a presentation of this Panther dashboard at GDevCon NA. So after the conference, have a look at this presentation. So basically, it's enhancement for working with DQMH and having a productivity tool. And as you can see here, some of the enhancements that he would like to improve are configuration, theming, and so on. On the one of the other ideas that we have for continuous integration is this YAML to JSON converter, which was presented by Francois Normandin, who has made both the MQTT framework in LabVIEW and most of the open source packages. He's also heavily involved in Kjær. And these are really interesting ideas, but they are also really large because both the JSON and YAML specifications are quite extensive. And one of the things you could think about with the YAML and JSON would be, well, I could drop down into Python and work on it, but then it wouldn't work on real time. So there are a lot of things that we would like to cover here, and especially for doing the LabVIEW toolkit here. We're maybe to clarify, we're not implementing the idea. We're just making sure that it gets implemented. So trying to find somebody to actually make it, making sure that it's funded, and there's some money to work with in order to build the toolkit. Another idea presented by Stephen Mercer would be to take all your open VIs, windows, your block diagrams, your front panels, if you're doing a debugging session, you have a certain way of setting them up in order to oversee the development of it, sort of like the way Visual Studio Code opens the same way as you closed it. This would be adding a feature to the window stack and then adding a quick drop shortcut that you could actually push this to save. And it was also make sort of the same idea for the VI peak, which was semantic zooming in LabVIEW, where you actually had the top level VI and then you could follow the call stack downwards in a problem and then going back up and down in the call stack. This was the first idea released to the GID exchange, and the campaign is still active, but the first version has already been released. And as I said, I would come back to Bowzer the Browser by Casey May. He's part of Kjær Solutions, and he's also part of our GID exchange. But for these 3 feature improvements for Bowzer the Browser, he abstained from the voting. So we can also push ideas into the list of ideas being worked on, but we're not allowed to vote on them in the case of any decisions that relates to the idea that we have presented. And one of the things is for Bowzer the Browser was to have this sort of, if you've tried the toolkit, then there's a docking window for choosing the implementation. There's some collapsible block diagram windows and so on. And last but not least, there's an improved search for callers. The last part here, the improved search for callers, is actually part of Bowzer the Browser 1.3, which is available on VIPN today. Actually, it was released a couple of days ago, 10 to be exact. And this sort of is one of the ideas that has gone through the entire process. And we would really love to see many more of these ideas. We know that we are not experts at this yet. So we have a lot of new aspects coming in the future. One of them is that we would like to improve the workflow around working with the ideas. So something that scales better in the future, making sure that we can work on many ideas and not just a couple of these. And if we got 200 ideas tomorrow, then we would definitely have our work cut out for us. But we would also like to involve the world of LabVIEW developers in the refinement and the review, making sure that all the inputs for the different ideas and all the positive feedback for an idea is actually being part of the community-driven development for the different ideas. So maybe it's not the first draft of the idea that is the best solution for all work cases, but maybe it's the 3rd iteration, but all the discussions could happen in one place. And one of the places that we would like for this to happen was to have a sort of a forum on, a sub-forum on the NI forums for 2 reasons. We would like to get closer to the community and making it more immediate that you can actually post an idea to the idea exchange. But we would also, we have also seen the DQMH feature forum or feature request system, which actually works quite well for the setup that we would like to have. So it's something like that we're aiming towards. And we have an ongoing democracy process on this with NI. And of course, this also brings more eyes on the same ideas. So really having more input is a gift in this case. So maybe you're sitting and asking, how can you help? Well, one of the things is submit your ideas. We need something more to work with. Even though we would like our process to scale better, throw ideas at us. Ideas are just wishes until somebody makes them an implementation. We would also like that you follow, comment, or repost any of the GCentral posts on social networks. If we can reach out to more companies, if we can reach further into the networks, this would be really nice. We would really like to reach a larger audience. If you have an open source project and you need, or you would like to share the knowledge about it, reach us out and we'll post it on our media channels as well, making sure that everybody knows about your project. And if your company is actually doing support of open source projects, maybe once a year, please point them in our direction. We have tried to make a dear management letter to help the process. But last, of course, but not least, there's one more way you could actually contribute. You could donate, but usually when people donate, they really want something back. So of course you could donate sort of an amount, but you could also take part of this future event that we are building, which is the SquareBattle for open source. So during March, we will set up a team battle for SquareBattle, an online global event. All the funding from the event will go towards ideas on GCentral and GID Exchange. The funding will be $10 per team or somewhere in that range. And it will be online, and we'll sort of stream the end game with commentators wearing funny hats or something like that. And we'll set up some tournament brackets. So depending on the number of people joining in, this is the idea at least. And of course, there'll be epic matchups. We'll do the Ryder Cup style, Europe versus US, or the rest of the world. We'll do NI versus the community. We'll figure out some sort of virtual prizes that everybody gets. But of course, there has to be something special for the winner, either besides the glory and honor of actually beating everyone else. So the idea is that everybody ends up with a virtual badge that they actually joined this party and had proof of joining in. And we'll, as I mentioned, probably set it during March. But how will you be able to know? Make sure you follow us on the social media. And now it's time for the questions. Thank you for your attendance. And please use this link if you want to go to the presentation, the questionnaire for new ideas. Thank you for your time. Switching to question mode. Thank you, Kjær, for posting all the team pages. Thank you, Philippe. So going through the Q&A, Oliver, is there any organization similar to GIE in other language communities that implement the process you're presenting? And Kjær has answered this one. There's as mentioned, there's the Python development community, but their approach is more that the sales of tickets to Python conferences gives an input to the Python Software Foundation, where people can actually request funding from, either for an idea or for the attendance of a conference in person. So if you need help for a conference, that would be, or for joining a conference, that would be here. You would be able to search that out.